So I'm calling the work session of December the 17th, 2019 of the Colleyville City Council to order. 5 o'clock, on time. Thank you all for being here. We have a bunch of items on the agenda and a lot to talk about, so we're going to go. I got to call the roll first. Are y'all yelling at me? Councilmember Nakamura.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Here.
Councilmember Wheat.
Here and eating.
The mayor. That's good to see. It's sweet.
Under.
Mayor is here. Councilmember Dodson.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Rigney is in Australia. So if you're watching, we hope you got your luggage. I understand it got lost.
Oh, no.
So with that, though, we'll move right into agenda item 1, which is the citizen survey. Adrian's going to present.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. So tonight our presentation is to go over the results of the 2019 Citizen Survey. The Citizen Survey is something that has been completed on a mostly every other year basis for about the last 10 years. So we're excited to have this additional tool to gather citizens' feedback and input. So tonight we'll go over real quickly the survey methodology, responses to individual questions and trends, and a summary of the overall findings. As a reminder, our survey format is traditionally to have a portion of questions that stay the same, and that way we can track those trends over time, and that tends to be our satisfaction with services section. And then we have a portion of questions that we call the alternating section, and that allows us to get feedback from citizens on just whatever issues are present at that time that we need some additional input on. And then, of course, we always have some demographic characteristics. Andrea Thomas, who's the owner of National Service Research, is our third-party survey administrator. We find it efficient and kind of nice to have that expert outside professional handle the administrative side of it, and she handles the online-only portion of that survey. So responses to the citizen survey remain high. Approximately 15% of all households completed a survey. Typically you see in random sampling of populations around an 8 to 10% response rate, so we're pretty pleased all in all. Now, as a reminder, our survey questions did not require you to answer every single question. You could go through the survey and choose which questions you wanted to answer. So the number of people responding to each individual question may vary, but we feel like that also helps more people want to participate if they don't feel obligated to do every single one. So in terms of technical notes, it's a statistically significant survey with a margin of error plus or minus about 3.3% at a 95% confidence level. As I just mentioned, all questions were optional to answer. We don't, in this presentation, go through all results cross-tabulated by demographics. For example, so an example of that would be how did all females respond to this particular question, or how did all citizens of this age group respond to this question. We don't present it by demographic group, but that information is in that back-end massive data set if we ever needed it, but we just go over the responses in their entirety as we go through these results presentations. When we go through it, it'll be in bar chart form, also in table form. I know some people like to see the more graphic visual, some people like to see the raw numbers, so we'll have it in both formats for you. So we'll jump right in and go through the responses of the first section of the survey, questions 1 through 5. So this first section of the survey focuses on communication preferences. Based on citizen responses, the most frequently used communication sources were the city e-newsletter and utility bill newsletter called The Communicator, followed by the city website and local newspaper, magazine, radio. So in this survey, Facebook increased to 26%, up from 18% in 2017. And the 2019 Citizen Survey ultimately had more folks utilizing the e-news or e-communicator. That section has dramatically increased from the prior survey. And so, over time, we see that fewer people are signed up and are now added to our subscriber list for our e-news and text alerts. So it's great to be able to get more information into citizens' hands in the way that they want to receive it. So this next question, 90% of respondents are either very satisfied or satisfied with the city keeping citizens informed about city business. And that's a 3% increase from 2017. The very satisfied percentage increased from 19% to 26%. So again, I think that's pretty significant change there. 28% of respondents reported that no additional ways of communication are needed from the city, which is up from 15% in 2017. So we always ask, are there any other ways that we could communicate with you that you'd like to receive? And it's interesting to me that some people say email or Facebook and may not realize that the city already has those available. But I think it's pretty significant that almost a third of respondents say, we're doing everything, and that continues to grow. We'll, of course, always try to make those more available and promote those and let people know that that information source is out there. But I think that's good to see overall.
Is that category more proactive current communication? Is there a 2017 question?
So this question is actually an open-ended question when it asks, are there other ways? And she's grouped these by kind of category. There were only 193 respondents to this question. And she simply grouped like type responses is best available into those types of categories.
What did the website say again? Because I'm surprised that they're,
On the prior one?
yeah, that one.
So the website has gone down a bit in terms of the primary method of utilization as social media and electronic
I think that
yeah,
they're
that makes
looking for
sense.
news, they're not looking for
Yeah.
or
details.
static information, right?
And even if you're looking for research information that you traditionally would go to the website, it's just as easy as searching in Google, and it takes you to the website directly rather than navigate the website.
That's very true.
That's
So-
what I usually do.
Yeah, a lot of people have gravitated away from
Yep.
the website being the
Is the launch point.
Yeah,
And also, just like social media, Facebook, a lot of our information that you get on the website is also posted on Facebook, so a lot of people get their information from Facebook.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
the increase has been huge. I've watched it just grow
No,
and
they
grow
get
and
it
grow.
from you, Bobby, okay?
Mm.
That's
Well,
why
we
those
appreciate
numbers-
y'all sharing the city's information so that more folks can see it.
We're working in,
You love
we're working
it,
to go
then I
doing
can just
that.
share yours.
All right. So this next question, moving on from communication preferences, we're now looking at satisfaction with city performance. So you will see that compared to prior surveys, satisfaction of respondents has either increased or been maintained since 2017. The responses shown in the bar chart represent the combined responses of very satisfied and satisfied, and compare those same response categories from prior surveys. So the largest jumps in satisfaction was with effective zoning and land use regulations, which I think is really interesting. I know we've had a lot of cases come before the council that we've spent quite a bit of time on over the last year or two, and so it's kind of nice to see that reflected in satisfaction with our citizens. And this satisfaction question had a lot of pieces to it, so it takes us several slides to cover all of it. This slide continues with satisfaction related to a number of areas. Again, it's encouraging to see increased satisfaction with value related to taxes paid, listening to citizens, and planning for future needs. Responses to encouraging economic growth, I think, show a desire for even more city action. So that's good feedback to have. When we look at the questions specific to economic development later tonight in the presentation, you'll see strong citizen support for a variety of strategies that the city has begun pursuing. So really helpful information. The breakdown here is the detailed breakout of responses for just the 2019 year. So you'll notice that the highest satisfaction ratings were related to the city's performance in maintaining quality of life. And performance related to developing a future vision for the city received the largest number of the dissatisfied or very dissatisfied at 35%, yet still 65% of citizens were either satisfied or very satisfied. So when your lowest category is still 65% very satisfied or satisfied, again, that's pretty positive. This next question focuses on contact with city employees. And when compared to results from prior survey years, satisfaction has improved in all areas and been maintained in one. The area of most significant improvement was received timely follow-up, going from 77% to 83%, being either satisfied or very satisfied. So we're very proud of our team and staff for responding to citizens and being dynamic and proactive in those areas. The detailed satisfaction ratings for 2019 responses, again shown here. The greatest satisfaction was with general courtesy, and the lowest satisfaction with timely follow-up, which again, funny in that the very satisfied and satisfied grouping for timely follow-up was still 83%. This next section of questions focuses on quality of life. When asked how satisfied they were with overall quality of life in Colleyville, responses continue to be extremely positive, with 95% of respondents responding either satisfied or very satisfied. I think
That's really exaggerated.
and all of the charts are exaggerated in order to kind of see those differences, but absolutely, 95% satisfaction is huge.
2 points, and it looks like it's
Yeah,
50% better.
absolutely.
Oh, I was thinking, what are you talking about?
Lying statistics.
So the 2019 Citizen Survey contains several questions related to quality of life. To break it down into some different areas, satisfaction on these quality of life questions, again, high, with the highest grouping being with having Colleyville be a place to raise a family at 98% satisfaction. Overall safety of Colleyville at 97%, and as a place to live also at 97%. Lowest was place to do business, 64%, and overall appearance at 75%.
Overall appearance, no.
Wow.
I think I said that backwards.
Yeah, that's
Place to work.
wrong, a place to work.
And a place to do business.
Yes, okay, place to do business, 64. Overall
Two,
appearance, 82.
overall appearance is
Wow, that's
82%.
shocking.
All right. So another question we continue to ask citizens is whether during the time they have lived here, whether Colleyville has changed for the better, remained the same, or changed for the worse. And almost half, 48% of respondents feel that Colleyville has changed for the better, which has remained stable from our prior survey. So again, holding the line there. With question 5, we transition from quality of life questions to satisfaction with particular city services. The various city services included in this question are many, so again, we'll take 3 slides to cover all of them. You'll see in this slide improvements in satisfaction for EMS, police protection, library programs, municipal court, trash and recycling service, and animal control. So a lot of growth and satisfaction there. The red bar in this case is the 2019 responses, again grouping the satisfied and very satisfied. This next slide, the most significant change is that satisfaction with water and sewer services increased from 84% up to 91%. It's also interesting to note the jump in satisfaction with traffic enforcement and community events. I think it's entertaining that, a lot of times you think people don't like traffic enforcement, but to have a positive growth in that area, I think is nice to see.
Adrian?
The previous slide, you've got, or the satisfaction with city services slide, my apologies.
Which one?
It's the Q5 one.
Okay, there's
There's a
a couple
typo
of
on
them.
it. Down at the bottom, it says 2018. It
Yes,
says
and I've changed that in your presentation
Okay.
here. I noticed that in the packet that
Right.
the chart was mislabeled as 2018 and not 2019.
Thank you.
Yes, you're correct.
George, yeah.
I caught it expecting George to find it and changed it for this presentation tonight.
I moved to a different seat, so I had to do a different.
I'm impressed.
Don't
I'm
worry,
impressed.
George is looking right now. Get him, George.
Thank God we have you.
Gonna try to
There's a
beat me on the
tie-in.
next slide.
There's a tie.
A couple of people here
It's-
are
it's
strong
also worth-
IT people.
It's also worth noting on this,
Does that make any
on this
difference?
information that, one area you see that was identified maybe as where the satisfaction wasn't as high as it was in the previous year, youth athletic fields, has received a heavy focus this summer and fall.
Absolutely.
And so it's great to see the positive, but it's also nice to see that where there are some areas identified, we have already been working on those. And so
Exactly.
that's important. It's when we see them, we're not been working on them, that we're missing out on the messaging from the community.
Right, you would hope that where our efforts are focused on are the areas that the community has identified as priorities as well.
As I read through this, and I was thinking to myself, man, if we'd have took this next year to see what all the things that we have in store that's coming, how
Exactly.
those would have changed. But it'll change on the next one too.
Sure.
Absolutely. So continuing on this last slide with question 5, the most significant change in this grouping was a 7% increase in satisfaction with street maintenance. We've got another section in the alternating questions that we'll go over that talks a bit more about infrastructure replacement. We've got some great feedback there as well.
George, there's a misspelled word up there.
I know. It's okay.
Poor Adrian.
I couldn't catch them all.
Can't get ahead here.
Couldn't catch them all.
But 99.9% of the rest of it is
Exactly.
perfect.
Move on.
I'll take it.
Perfect.
There you go.
So this final slide,
By the way, Mayor, I caught one.
oh, the diversity word, yeah, he did. We'll give George credit. This final slide shows the detailed breakdown in responses, again, related to satisfaction with city services. These are listed in order from highest to lowest, with 99% of respondents either satisfied or very satisfied with fire protection, and then so on down the list. So again, kind of helpful to see the information presented in a couple different ways. Continuing, this chart lists satisfaction order 12 through 22. And that takes us to our alternating section of questions. So the first section that we're going to go through is economic development. We had about 4 or 5 different categories of alternating questions. I'm sure you remember us going through the survey design conversations. But this first section is really great feedback. A majority of respondents, 91%, in total, feel that the city should be very proactive or somewhat proactive in the role of economic development. So again, great feedback to receive as it helps us understand how citizens want their government to be involved, and in this case, it's a lot. So really good. This next question, a little bit more of a philosophical type question. 77% strongly agree or just agree that the role of economic development is to diversify the city's tax base. So good understanding to have. This next question asked about whether folks were aware of the city's efforts and promotions to incentivize shopping locally, and 77% were aware. So we're pleased to hear this, as that lets us know that we've effectively gotten the word out if the vast majority of folks are aware of those programs. We want to make sure that our business community is being supported, and that means people know about those opportunities.
But we have work to do, though, because it should be higher percentage strongly agree. And so our messaging needs to keep getting out.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always room to improve, and just because we've gotten the word out to the majority doesn't mean that we can't have even more people on the strongly agree side. So this next question asks for more specific feedback in terms of how the city should be involved in economic development. And in this case, 84% to 89% of respondents feel the city should be involved or very involved in these 4 efforts in total. So again, the range of responses that are grouping that blue and yellow bar together is quite high. So whether it's incentivizing and attracting specific businesses or investing in land for quality economic development and to preserve open space, again, very strong support for that. Providing resources for business development and support, and facade improvements and building enhancements. All of these are things that citizens seem to support in a strong way. This next section transitions to feedback on our community events. So 89% of respondents feel that community events build a sense of community. So again, we were wanting to know if this is something that is a worthwhile effort, and we always hope to have a sense of community here in Colleyville. I think that's something the city is known for, kind of that small town charm, and the thought has always been that community events help build that community fabric and an opportunity for people to be together and fellowship, and this type of feedback lets us know that citizens feel the same way. This next question asks and what type of events and age groups we should focus on when we think about what events to bring out to citizens. And more than half of the respondents would like events focused on families. So again, I think that's not surprising information to see. This goes into specific events, listing all of our events and satisfaction overall. It's interesting to note when you look again at combining the green and yellow categories there for all of those events. All events had a satisfaction rating of between 88 and 97% satisfaction, except for the farmers market, which was at 67%. So all in all, really positive regard for all of those events. Farmers market, we got a little bit of room to improve. There may have been some issue and struggle there with having some different locations as we dealt with moving it around. So that's not necessarily shocking to see. And
I think it just it's totally different where it's over there, it's not nearly as.
Absolutely.
They're
as
coming
many.
back in January.
Yep, I mean, y'all just had that meeting today, right?
Yeah.
You gonna go to Saturday
In
again?
here at the plaza.
Okay.
Saturday again?
No, they'd like to stay on Thursdays, so.
Oh, they do? Oh.
We're sort of thinking maybe tie it in with our movies and our concerts in the spring and summer, so
Maybe.
that there's a multiple activities going on.
I don't like it on Thursdays, but I mean, that's
You
just
can
me,
change it
I'm
to
one
Tuesdays
person,
if you
yeah.
prefer.
No, I like it on the weekend.
I can't get off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are out more on the
Mornings I
weekends.
drive by.
and-
See y'all later.
But that's just me, that's,
You got
yeah.
to.
Anyway.
All right. So this next grouping goes over,
Thursday, just curious.
It's a good, we had a good discussion on it. I liked Sundays, and I know people feel differently about Sundays, but I think after church, it's a nice family activity to go do things as a group. But Saturdays, of course, you compete with all the athletics, and Fridays you compete with the end of the week and school activities as well. So it was really between the weeknight and Sunday, and they thought that it was a better night to pick Thursday, and that it could work with other events, that it wouldn't compete against other events, it could be complementary of other events. And so it leaves our Saturdays and Sundays open for varying events, but it's also a nice weeknight filler event like a concert or a movie, which also works well midweek, because Saturdays and Sundays are
Crazy.
busy, especially when you're running a movie.
But
Well,
do they,
let's-
oh, excuse me, do they feel, I mean, have all of them come back for the most part? They feel, even with what we've got going on with moving them around, that it's a good place to be?
Yes, they really like the plaza design, and what we're trying to do is push back toward a more pure market with the produce.
Right.
And so we're trying to find ways to encourage their main producers, the regional farm participants, to come back. This was a bad year for them. A lot of them had a very heavy rain laden spring and then a very hot summer. So that really wreaked havoc with a lot of the regional farmers. But we think that should be the core, and then the rest built
I
upon
agree.
that. And we're working on that now. So.
Yeah, because the
I just-
other,
I-
not a lot of people like some of those other.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that. I would also just bring up, I mean, we see all these family events. Thursdays, kids still have sports. Like, it's still, in our demographic, people are still in there, like, I mean, that's what I'm doing. I pick my kids up and I rush them to all their sports activities. I don't have time to go to the farmer's market, so.
Sure.
Yes.
Just us feedback on,
And we
we
can-
can evaluate once it moves back and see what we think.
In regard to that, is there a day of the week that's not?
Not for me.
I don't think there is for anybody. No, because there was never
She'll
one
call
for
you and
me.
let you know.
But they're
Yeah.
indicative of a lot of families who have multiple obligations across
Right.
multiple
Right.
School
Exactly.
and family, and then, of course,
And
athletic.
extracurricular,
And
exactly.
extracurricular. And so we're struggling, and so we're not set on a specific date. We can move around as we need to. And we can also do additional markets to complement events like our car show.
Which is
And
a
so
neat idea.
you can combine them. But they had to have one date was their standard, and right now it's Thursday, so we continued that into January, but moving them back here.
I think that's great. First step, see how we think Thursdays do once you move it
We'll
back.
go
and-
out and pick it or something with the sign.
I am not opposed to the farmer's market. I just have a hard time getting there. How would I pick it if I can't get there?
You can send a representative.
Hire a picket, there you go.
I do not do that.
One of the other points on the Thursday market was the access to vendors. So if you have a weekend market, a lot of them already kind of have scheduled their larger farmers
Okay.
markets that they always go to. And so being a newer market, having it on a weeknight can open it up to a more variety of
That's a
potential
good
vendors
perspective.
or
And
Yeah.
better vendors.
better vendors. Yeah.
No, let's move it back to over here and see how it does. I think that's great.
so this next set of questions goes over infrastructure replacement and some feedback from citizens related to that. This first question, when asked about the city's efforts over the last 3 years to improve roadways, 84% of respondents felt that the 40 miles of roadway construction and improvement reflects extremely positively or positively for the city. Only 9% felt that it was somewhat or extremely negative. So I think we know that it's been a lot to kind of get through, but I think everybody sees the value there in terms of why that's being done for community assets.
So did they want
Adrian.
80 miles?
What is how many, I know that the questions vary, but overall, the 4% of extremely negative, how many people are we talking about there?
You know, every question
I
has
know
a
it's
different
different,
number of
but-
respondents, and I can go back and
Average.
get the master table, but it varies from, you know, of course, 1,300 down to 400, and it's really specific question to
No, I
question.
know, but I want the extremely negative people. I'm just
On
curious.
this one,
what-
I can find out for you.
Kind of across the board
just-
as a curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, is it 10 people
Let's
or
just,
300?
just give us
You
a
know,
list of
just a
names,
general-
that's all we can.
No.
I don't have that. Anonymous. But no, I can find out.
We have no names.
They have no names in these surveys.
I'll
We're not gonna-
I'll find out and let you know.
No, but I'm just curious, that, you know, because if
Sure.
it's 400 as opposed to 4,
Sure,
we need to
Just
look a little
interesting.
closer at something.
absolutely.
In most of these questions where there are the negative responses, you know, all of them, there were a few people that were
Sure.
unhappy. Totally makes sense, that's reasonable. Were there open-ended places where people said, this is what I'm unhappy about? Did we get much
Yes.
feedback like that?
Yes,
Okay.
we did. When you read through, gosh, it was over 100-ish pages of open-ended responses.
Sure.
A little hard to tabulate here. But,
Absolutely.
But yes, no, we actually sent that out to our staff and asked them to read through all of the open-ended comments because that's good feedback for them in their area. So certainly, you can see some themes of it must have been the same person giving the same feedback
So
to
there was
every
some
single
helpful
opportunity.
information. Okay.
But certainly, yeah, we read through all of that.
Tammy, 4% at the low of 400 would be 16. At the high of 13, it would be 52.
Yeah, but
Still, small numbers either
Your
way.
ITM numbers.
Well, and remember,
Yeah,
this
but-
is how people feel. Some people may feel road construction is a negative, they just don't like it. And so their perception is that they felt it was extremely negative.
yeah, because you have to answer it one way or the other.
Right, it's like certain things that you do because you have to, not because you enjoy it. And so to them, they may perceive it as a negative, even though they recognize
It has to be done, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this next question asks, please indicate if you agree or disagree with the statement, outside of work on 26 and Highway 121, which are TxDOT projects, the city is providing the proper amount of road construction. So just over half, 53% agree that the city is providing proper amount of construction, and 24% disagree that there's not enough road construction. So most notable, only 15% felt that there was too much road construction. So, you know, really interesting feedback to receive. And of course, that's just in terms of the construction the city is responsible for. If you included 26, you know, that might make things a little bit
They
different.
probably
But,
live right off that, right behind
you know,
that.
that's, in terms of cities,
Who did they keep after?
Well, but on the heels of the 26 project, even though you exclude it from the question, it has a strong
course.
impact on the way you answer this question.
I think it'd be hard for
Absolutely.
most people to separate that in their
Yeah.
mind, you know,
Yeah.
truly.
right.
Absolutely.
But that's still very interesting.
Agreed,
Yeah.
agreed. I think these questions were really timely and helpful to have in the survey. So when asked about preference for shorter and more frequent road projects compared to longer and less frequent road projects, just over half, 55%, prefer shorter duration with greater frequency, and 1/3 prefer longer duration with less frequency. So again, really, really helpful
And
and
the best way
interesting.
to describe this, I think, is the Pleasant Run versus John McCain.
Absolutely.
Those
Great
two projects
examples.
were the exact same level of consideration. One, we went with the reconstruction, the other, we went with the resurfacing.
And John McCain was originally thought to be the other,
And John
yeah.
McCain now will be receiving additional work at a sooner timeline in Pleasant Run.
Because it was quick.
Yep.
But that's what this is
Extremely
intended to
quick.
understand, so we better interpret that for moving forward on projects.
Yeah, helps inform our CIP decisions for sure.
Yes.
So this last set of questions, I think we saved the heaviest set of questions for the end of the survey, is related to the desire for citizens to have a multi-purpose recreational facility. So the very first question in this section was, you know, are you interested in this at all or not? 67% of respondents said that they were. And we'll go through the next several set of slides. There's a good amount of difference in terms of what citizens think that should mean. There were 4 different options presented, and then within some of those options, it was further split on how the costs were divided, whether it was all property taxes or somewhat membership fee cost recovery basis. So we'll go through each of those separately. This first option is a comprehensive option.
We don't know, so this question was, if they were in the 33%, they could have ignored everything, but we don't know if they did or not.
No. So the first option was the comprehensive. That was the complete tear down, rebuild. This is kind of going all the way of new facility, gym, senior facilities, fitness room, multi-use space, and the indoor aquatics. So that's the other kind of big ticket item there. This particular question asks whether citizens are interested in this type of facility with the business model of no membership fees for citizens. So this would be kind of the property tax supported version, which is a little bit more of the Grapevine Rec model, and that
High-end
means
property
yes,
tax
high
supported.
end, absolutely, and that means more costs would be funded, the vast majority through increased property tax. So in this scenario, only 29% strongly agree or agree, while 64% disagree or strongly disagree. So I think this tells us citizens in general, you know, if you're going to go all the way with, you know, having everything, they don't want the model that you know, is entirely property tax reliant.
The answer is no.
Right. So this next scenario is again the comprehensive option, but in this model we ask, what do you think about this model with a 50% cost recovery through some sort of membership fee model? So when we look at this, you know, just about half of respondents agree, while you still have 44% disagree or strongly disagree. So, you know, again, we're kind of there,
Not a
but
strong
not quite the
yes.
tipping point yet. We had some alternative scenarios here. So the alternative scenario was again kind of a tear down new build, but a little less extreme. This was a 30,000 square foot building with gym, senior center facilities, but does not have as much of a fitness focus and does not have the aquatics. So in this scenario, there's two of these scenarios again. This first one assumes 0% cost recovery through fees, and there was very little support for this. Only 22% strongly agree or agree. Yeah, again, no. You'll find that these middle-of-the-road type options were not favorably received. The other alternate option, again, kind of the new facility but without all the bells and whistles. This assumed a 20% cost recovery because you're not going to charge the same type of fee structure if they don't have a pool and if they don't have the full-blown fitness facility. Again, only 29% were in favor of this type of option. So I think we learned, again, it's kind of a go all the way or don't in that type of scenario. This option E is the renovation of the current facility and then add a gym. Only 29% strongly agree with this, and 64% disagree or strongly disagree with this option. So again, not a lot of support for just plain reno and add a gym. And then this last scenario is for just renovation, and that's it, of the current building. So no gym, just kind of rehab. And 42% strongly agree or agree with this option, and 49% disagree or strongly disagree. So that's a lot of information to take in. We've grouped it here, so you can kind of see all of those in a single summary of charts that are color-coded. So the strongest support was for that comprehensive option B, where we have 50% cost recovery through fees, followed by the renovation only option. Those tended to be kind of the two. So you see that a little bit of polarization of either, you know, go all the way and recover as much as you can through fees, or do the bare minimum rehab that's needed and call it a day. And
There's still a lot of negative.
there's
it's
still a quite a bit
50%.
of difference. And so this next question actually goes through and says, okay, you've answered all of these questions about each individual scenario. If you had to pick one, where are you at? And, you know, going through and saying which of these, this is where the breakout landed. And so even in there, only 29% preferred that option B over all everything, and then 29% dead tie for reno only. So, you know, kind of looking at this, I think we've certainly heard that there's kind of maybe a growing segment of folks that desire this type of facility.
We don't know if they're growing.
Well, maybe not
So
growing,
there is a
but
segment.
this is the first time we've asked this question. I mean, we hear some feedback in a lot of the open-ended questions, at least.
It's a really tough question. It's so, I mean,
Yes.
we gave them everything, but it's so
Yes.
complicated.
Very complicated.
Linda absolutely convinced we didn't get good understanding. But, I mean, I'm interested in, I do want the numbers on that first question.
Okay.
How many answered that first one? And then I would like the
Okay.
numbers on how many answered each of those in
I
the last
agree.
summary slide,
Okay?
and how many answered this one.
If we don't
There's
know,
information.
How
we need
many?
to know every
Okay.
slide how many, because
can get that for you.
if it's 60% like it, but it's only
Right, yeah, it is,
30% of the people, it doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah, so you want that for all of these
Yes.
Yeah,
questions?
I think
for
in the
everyone.
end- In the end, when I look at this, I'd like to see those numbers.
Of course.
Kind of,
Yes,
did we get answer or not?
yes.
Because it was it too confusing?
And don't be confused, this 29% isn't how many actually wanted this done. This is just the option that
If
they
you had to
gave.
choose
Out of
one.
all of them.
Right,
So-
right. So it's a
The
totally
other one, the
different.
slide before is the one
Yeah,
that
so
actually
that
shows.
question was there, totally different design.
Sure.
Because of the complexity, and they
Yeah.
said, okay, force you to answer one, but that's kind of an interesting result. They either
Very.
go all the way, and go,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, very interesting, that's very clear.
I'm surprised we got as much
That's
as we
very
did.
clear.
By the way, whoever drew the graph skewed it towards option B. See, the line is closer to the,
I think that's just an optical illusion. I bet it was Excel, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
29%
Andrea said she,
is
used
closer to the
the
line,
exaggeration
but-
charts to make it more easily readable.
So-
But certainly.
Five's
He
over
thinks,
five,
he thinks
too,
the
but
29% line and the
The
low one
lines
F
are off.
is longer, I mean,
Oh.
shorter
It's
than.
a- it's
smart.
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
a- it's not a
I
true
see what you're
chart.
saying.
It's
It
a-
looks
It's
bigger
an optical
for
illusion.
some reason.
It's a visual chart, not a true Excel
Exactly,
chart.
exactly.
I see exactly what he's saying.
That's
Okay,
fine.
well, we'll get you those numbers on the
We'll
number.
get a ruler.
Somebody, I was gonna say, somebody
You
get
want
a
the
ruler.
Yeah.
Somebody get a ruler.
Okay.
The last question we asked in the Parks and Recs section of the alternating questions had nothing to do with a multipurpose facility. We simply asked, what additional amenities would you like to see? Of course, there's always different things that come up, and the number one was a dog park. So, I think we hear people asking for it, but it's good to
Great.
see that information. And of course, there's, a decent amount of support for splash pad and pickleball and fitness equipment, but, still,
Ball.
dog park is number one.
There you go.
But the mayor, London, the mayor for a day said.
What?
Dog park.
Obviously, he
He's
knows
on to
something.
something.
He knows something.
So this very last section of the questions, we always ask demographic questions just in case we were ever to need that data. We always think it's interesting. This first one is, we divide it based on your day of recycling, just to understand the different kind of, in general, quadrants of the city. And the northwest and northeast tend to respond a little bit more, but in general, relatively balanced. We ask demographic in terms of what applies to the head of household, and the vast majority of respondents either work outside of Colleyville or are retired. In this survey, 60% of respondents were 55 years or older, compared to when we did this in 2017, 64% were 55 years or older. So the average age of this is trending down just a little bit compared to the last survey.
One thing on the work outside of home is pretty small. I mean, work in the home, basically, 5%.
You're not work outside the home, yeah, 5%.
So anyway, it's interesting
It is.
relative
It is.
to our center. 5% of however many answered. That's the other question too.
They retired early.
And then,
Don't work outside the home.
well, and that may be some stay-at-home parents and,
So I think what George is
I
saying, the
interpreted-
stay-at-home parents didn't answer this.
sure.
I interpret it as they do work at home.
Oh, no, I
So I
read
interpret that
Right,
as
that they don't work.
A
stay-at-home.
stay-at-home parent, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's-
interpret
that's
that
how
as a
I read it.
Well, we
stay-at-home
should have asked
That's
that question.
exactly what Linda would say. She
It's a
works
double
at home.
negative anyway, so.
I don't
confusing.
even say I don't work. I
Do
don't
not work
either.
outside the home. So she would still, I mean,
No,
I know.
Yes, no, but yeah, I think that it tends to be your stay-at-home
Because
parent.
if you were working at home, you'd say, work inside of Colleyville.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's it. I don't know.
That's how I interpret it.
Well,
I think
those
it's
offices
confusing
do
the way
that.
it's worded.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, so the next one that we hadn't gone over, how long have you lived in Colleyville? So in this case, 60% of respondents have lived in Colleyville for 11 years or more. So compared to 2017, it was 62%, this time it was 60%. So lots of long-term Colleyville residents responding. And then always interesting to know which youth age groups are represented. In this survey, 58% of respondents have no children living in their household. 46% have children living in the house under the age of 18. So comparatively to 2017, it only changed by 1 percentage point. That number was 57%.
Can we get the numbers on that? Like, that would be interesting.
That might also be indicative of that other number as
Absolutely.
well.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then, not surprising, in Colleyville, do you own or rent your own home? Vast majority own.
Other 2%.
And then this one I
Airbnb.
think is interesting, just given a lot of the SUPs that have come forward lately. This asks, do you have an older parent or relative living with you? It says 7% do. This number's up from 2017, it was 5%. I know that's only a 2% growth, but you know, I think we've seen in society that tends to be a more common thing, so.
I'm in that pack.
Interesting. And then survey-wise, we had 57% female response to the survey. 43% male.
Tell Richard what I said, Jerry.
So we've got a couple of summary slides here, but I know we've got a pretty packed agenda. I think we got some really great information here. Again, pretty good response rate. Really great feedback on communications. A lot more people are using social media and electronically. Quality of life remains high. Satisfaction for city performance, again, highest for maintaining quality of life and welcoming citizen involvement. Citizen services, most notable top 5, fire protection, EMS, police, library, and court. City employee interaction, again, improvement from the prior survey, so that's good to see. And then economic development, we got feedback that the city should have an active role, so that's good for us to understand, and wanting us to diversify the tax base, and a lot of the strategies that we laid out that we're looking for, whether there was support for that or not, again, good feedback to have. Community events, again, seems to be some pretty strong indication that citizens feel that community events are important in terms of creating that overall quality of life. Infrastructure replacement, helpful to understand the amount of road construction, what the tolerance for that was, and what types of strategies we should be pursuing in terms of road improvement. And again, that rec center question, we've been talking about it for some time, and helpful to get those numbers, and I'll certainly get the specific number of respondents for you and circulate that back out, but really, really helpful information. So from here, we'll continue to have this available as we make decisions and go through, priority setting, upcoming budget process, any way this information filters down in terms of priorities ahead, we'll soak this in and get to work and make sure we're responsive to the citizens and their feedback.
Great.
We know you
Thank
will
you.
too.
Thank you.
All right.
Perfect.
Good information.
Very.
Very good. So now second item is park restroom design and details.
You have me facilitating this again. So Lisa Escobedo, our fabulous Parks and Recreation Director, got picked for jury duty. She called me at 5:30 on Friday and said, "Adrian, I got picked. I was the very last one that got picked." So she, is doing her civic duty and will likely be wrapped up in a case for most of this week. Fortunately, all of the hard work she has done on this presentation was already complete, and Aaron Babcock with Heidel and Associates and Lisa have been working closely together. So Aaron's going to walk you through the majority of this presentation. I will tell you that Lisa and I met in advance with Councilmember Rigney, knowing that the park improvements were kind of a special area of expertise of hers because her family's in the parks all the time and of interest. And so we went through this presentation before she left town to make sure we incorporated her feedback as well. And she had a couple of good points that we were able to incorporate. So I may point those out as we go along. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Adrian. Mayor, council members. I'm going to take you through the amenities that we're talking about improving at 3 different park locations. We're talking about doing improvements at the Nature Center Park, at Reagan Park, and then at City Park itself. So I'll start off with the Nature Center Park itself. The existing park has a playground area. It has a covered seating area, as well as then a parking area for not only the playground but for the trail. The scope of work for this park is really twofold. As far as the trail goes, we're going to install blue lights along the trail. We'll go out there and strategically locate those along that trail. The other part of it is we're locating a new unisex restroom, tentatively located between the actual playground structure and the covered seating area. This structure itself, it has 2 restrooms, 2 unisex restrooms with a janitorial or a utility room in between. The structure itself will be a CMU block structure with concrete floor. And then there is a covered area out in front of the doorways that includes a drinking fountain.
I had a question right off the bat.
You bet.
Just wanted to make sure these are going to be ADA compliant, because when I looked at them, 9 foot 4 inches didn't look like it was compliant. It
So-
may be.
So they are. So each of these will have to be ADA compliant. They will have the appropriate grab bars and all of that. So no matter what restroom we're talking about today, they will be ADA compliant, as well as the, whether we need a ramping system leading up to these, we'll make sure we have that as well. The unique piece of the Nature Center is part of that land is actually in a floodplain, so we're gonna have to locate this out of the floodplain. We did something similar at LD Lockett Park, to where we raised it up a little bit to locate it out of it. So we'll make sure access to this is ADA compliant as well.
Good.
Here in the other, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a detailed question, but why wouldn't you have some kind of a wash basin or something in the janitor room?
We probably will. We're not quite to that point yet,
Oh.
but we would absolutely have. So each of these will have a utility room or a janitor's room. We'll have a basin in there. We'll have storage in there for their chemicals or supplies that they need, as well as we'll locate any hot water heaters, things like that, any of the utility and mechanical systems that
Okay,
we need.
yeah, it looked a little bit large. I was surprised that the restrooms were as large as they are. And
Well,
then,
Turning radius for handicap accessibility is 5 feet.
oh,
So you
okay.
have to have that circular approach.
Oh,
So
okay.
the center has to clear the
Door.
fixtures and the
The
door and
door,
everything by 5
okay.
feet, so.
Okay.
But the janitor's closet,
And the janitor's closet actually has to meet ADA standards as well. So we have to have that 5-foot clearance or turnaround in that janitor's closet.
Oh, I didn't know, okay.
Yeah.
And I'll
So-
point out tonight, part of what we're doing here is helping the council understand where we're at in the process, because you all approved these projects as a part of our capital improvement program. These were Parks Master Plan projects. And so these are the conceptual designs, and before we finalize bid documents and do the detailed construction documents, we wanted to make sure that this is what the council had in mind.
Okay.
And so as a reminder, the Nature Center and Reagan Park are new restroom facilities that do not presently exist.
Sure.
Because of these locations, these are intended to be attractive, but not necessarily as a high finish out as what we intend to do for rehab at City Park, because they're, just the type of use is a little bit different. Whereas when Aaron goes through the plan improvements for the City Park restrooms, you'll see a little bit higher level of finish out and fixtures in those.
Okay.
So three-dimensionally, what we're looking at is we would have a block structure, we'd have a stone veneer on that block structure, then we would have exposed structure above, and then we'd have a standing seam metal roof on this. So access into these would have somewhat of a cover over the top of them, leading into them, and then we'd have obviously the drinking fountains off of the facade. Materials that we're talking about for these, exterior-wise, we're talking about a standing seam metal roof, and then we're talking about a stone. Similar stone that you would find at McPherson or LD Lockett, so that we're starting to match up with other facilities within the Colleyville area. And then the interior finish for these would be a painted CMU finish. We'd probably do a wainscot just with the color. So we're changing that, and then we would have a sink. We'd have an ADA compliant water closet with the grab bars and handles. It'd be fully ADA compliant. Each of them would be a unisex restroom.
but I think it's worth noting though, because it's the nature center, we want to be a little bit more rustic.
Sure.
The bathrooms are a little bit more of that, design. So if you have problems with the block walls or the concrete floors, now's the time to start discussing that. So we switch to a more tiled design like we're going to have at City Park.
I actually like this in the Nature Center.
The other thing I'll call your attention to, this particular facility, has that overhang, in case it's raining and you need to run into the restroom. The difference between this one and Reagan Park, next to this, you already have the pavilion seating structure at the Nature Center available for families, whereas at Reagan Park, that roof, you'll see, actually is gonna come out and provide some bench seating, because there is nothing like that nearby.
Just one last question. Air conditioning provided?
So no, for these would be vented. So the Nature Center and Reagan Park are both just vented, but the ones we're gonna talk about, the improvements for City Park, both at the tennis center and the concession, those would have air conditioning, so they'd be heated and cooled.
That's something we may want to think about. I know it adds lots of cost, but it does add a lot to the ability to maintain and keep it a quality. I mean, you're going to have basic finishes, I get that, but it's a quality issue.
How much are we talking about? Can't be that much, can it?
It's a lot.
For a small unit like this, we're probably 10 grand or under. just to heat and cool it, because we would not heat or cool the actual janitor closet itself.
Right.
We would only be heating and cooling, and really what you're doing at that point is you're tempering it, so when you go in there, it's not super
But it
hot.
wouldn't cost you anything to heat the room, you got the AC there.
No, it wouldn't, but typically you wouldn't do that. You would just leave it to the restrooms themselves.
Why?
We want to keep our janitors happy.
I mean, we can heat or cool it.
I mean, there's no reason not to. It doesn't cost you anything, I mean, a vent.
Sure.
The greater concern I have is the air conditioning than the heating, but I agree you're gonna do both if you're gonna do it at all. But air conditioning in a bathroom, in a nature center in the summertime is an important aspect that I think shouldn't be overlooked.
And it really, nominally, because of the size of these, it's not a huge cost, because really what you're looking at is probably the smallest unit you're gonna be able to put in. So it's not a huge cost. If you guys wanna look at that, we can.
Is that something the council would like us to include in
Yeah.
the bid documents?
I think it's worth considering, yeah.
Sure.
It's hot, it's
There's
really
a
nature
I think
center.
it,
There's
they
a
just
lot of
feel
people-
dirtier
They
when
do,
they're,
they
you know,
do.
they just, yeah.
Absolutely.
And
it's
they're
brand
really
new.
not inviting when it's 110 degrees out.
And this is a brand new facility, so it's time to do it
But does
right.
it, do those air conditioning units need to be protected so some
Well,
of
they're
it doesn't
usually
steal?
up in the
So,
attic.
yeah, because of the design of this, the nice thing is we can actually locate them up above the
Okay.
utility room itself, and we can vent or do anything, so we can protect them.
They even make some that you can put wall mounted that are
Right.
more commercials, but whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
We can certainly integrate that in.
I think it's a good point. I think it's a good point.
Sure.
I don't think we need the toilets, just have the air conditioner.
So as Adrian said, the Reagan Park restroom, all the existing batting cages, the existing field would remain. We would include a sidewalk from the parking to the new restroom facility. This one's design is a little bit different, so it does have a covered or shaded area in front of the restroom itself. This has one unisex toilet, would also have that janitor's or utility closet we're talking about. We would then obviously heat and cool this one as we're talking about today, but the finishes for it are very similar. So three-dimensionally, we'd still have our exposed structure, our metal roof, our stone on the masonry walls.
Is one unit adequate? I don't know.
That's
One
a-
restroom?
that's-
It's a
yeah,
small-
That place,
Is it?
it's sufficient.
Yeah.
The one question
Quickly,
was,
they're quick.
could you put, to save some building size, could you put the janitor closet within the restroom and lock it so that you don't have to build that additional square footage?
Because it has to be ADA compliant, you're probably not saving much.
Well, no, the bathroom is already AD compliant, so the accessibility of the material you're storing there is gonna be pretty minor. Well, other than you'd have a small hot water heater and, dare I say, an air conditioning unit, but, and so those would be up in I assume in the attic.
They would.
My girls would love it.
And so your only thing you're storing then is supplies, and so could it be argued then you have a small closet in the bathroom that then would be locked?
That's an interesting
Rather than
point.
having to have a separate room that's ADA accessible?
Mhm.
That's all I'm asking.
If we can certainly look at that if you want to.
Just square footage that you don't have to build to that
That's
cost.
true.
But does that cause problem with the seating area up above?
Well, it'd be, the
Slightly
bathroom would be
smaller
slightly
building.
bigger, bathroom would be slightly bigger, but it wouldn't be the entire square foot. I'm just looking at square footage.
You could still have that area the same size, just
Building
not,
would have to be
building
centered
could be
underneath it.
smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the, right.
You're talking about, really what you're talking about is sorry, I always forget this is touchscreen. What you're talking about doing is basically, we could keep the width so you'd still have a covered area.
That's what I'm
We're just
saying.
making this a little thinner,
Yeah.
reorganizing that.
The other thing
We
you
can-
might find too is the Parks Department may want to use that closet as you could cut it down and access it from the bathroom, but also have an outside access for equipment for the park site, baseball equipment or whatever.
And just remember, if you take that away, you're taking away your structurally sound places for your roof to hitch onto. Right there, he's using a CMU wall. He'd be using, with a post in there to make that, that a little more secure. If you shrink that down, you're gonna have exposed posts on the outside with just,
Yeah.
I'm just giving you that
Yeah,
idea.
From
I
a-
would like to see, does that save you much money?
Yeah, well,
Is it
that's what I
worth
was gonna
it?
say.
Yeah.
From a square footage standpoint, I don't think you're really saving a lot, dollars-wise.
If you back up
But
one,
especially if you wanted to.
I'm just curious what we're gonna do with that existing water tower out in the middle of that basic softball field. I saw that, I was like, what's that doing out there?
$235,000.
We played it around it a couple of times.
Seriously.
That's not in the scope.
I will
Yeah.
say,
Sorry.
mentioning dollars,
It's as much
the
as-
estimates that we place held in the 5-year capital improvement program, all of the estimates for these came under the estimates that we had placed held.
It's great. I love how they mimic McPherson Park.
Yeah.
Before you even said that, I was gonna say, I love how they look like McPherson. It just has a nice continuity of design.
So, like we said before, the finishes of this one would be basically the same as what we're proposing for the Nature Center. With the stone veneer and then the masonry exposed on the interior.
Why is the cost so high?
Well, I mean, we are doing a stone veneer and this is masonry. We are gonna have to do a structural system so that it doesn't move. I mean, they just, even though they're small buildings, there's a lot of cost associated with this type of
Plumbing,
structure.
There's not plumbing out there. I would say that where you're at, where you've got that located, is prime real estate for a foul ball.
For a
Just
what, Bob?
It is.
For a third base line drive or foul balls.
We're
foul
technically
ball.
in foul territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a yellow line on it?
Yeah, part
Yeah,
of the
there's a-
strategy of that location was the
No, you're not.
utilities
Well-
available from
Where's the fence?
just
Now,
north
just
of
give it
that.
a-
There's some public work buildings right
Right.
there where we've got
I
water.
mean,
Right on the backside,
Helmet,
right.
'cause you're going-
Okay.
We actually looked at potentially putting it down here, but there's utility tie-ins that make it much more cost-effective for us to put it in that
You can't put
location.
it out in the parking lot, because that parking lot already is way too small as it is.
So,
Right.
Single fiber parking.
I'm not sure I understand it. Where's the field, home plate, and pitcher man?
So the field, right here is the fence. So this is home plate, third base, second, and first. So if you draw a line,
okay.
this sidewalk is strategically located to where it's right on the
Okay,
line.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
So we're technically in foul territory.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wanting to note that. I don't think there's another place.
So, the city park. So, the scope of work on this one really consists of the two existing restrooms that are out there. They are similar but a little bit different. So, the restroom facility that we have that is adjacent to the ball fields, it has restroom on one side and concessions on the other. The mirror image of it that's adjacent to the tennis area has a restroom on one side, but then a covered seating area on the other. We're proposing a similar type of work to both of these restrooms. So what we're proposing in one, we're really proposing in the other. We're gonna start with the one that's adjacent to the ball fields that has the concession facility in it. This is the existing layout of it. We're not gonna change the number of fixtures. They will remain the same, but in essence, what we're doing is we're going inside these restrooms and gutting them. We're gonna take all the fixtures, the mirrors, the grab bars, handles, everything. We're gonna take all of that out, including the partition doors. We'll take all of those things out and we'll start to put new finishes, new fixtures back into them. As far as this building being air conditioned, there is a mechanical unit above the concessions area. We're going to replace that unit and tap into it to be able to heat and cool these restrooms themselves. On the tennis center one, we'll put just a whole new unit in to heat and cool that itself. Interior finishes that we're talking about, as Adrian mentioned before, it's a little bit more high-end for these. We're suggesting that we're doing a tile up to a certain level, so we'll have wall tile on all the walls. We do a floor tile in here. There's an existing, if you guys have been in it, there's an existing trench drain to one side that's in pretty rough shape. So we would tile up to that, put a new trench drain in, and then we're gonna put all new fixtures in it. What we're proposing for the sink itself would be a trough unit. So these are system units that come pre-manufactured. They're a solid surface, so they're very durable. They're a full trough, so you have a little easier access for multiple people to get to them.
That was actually a suggestion from Councilmember Rigney.
The trench drain, have you considered getting rid of it and relocating some drain locations elsewhere where they can provide for, floor cleaning and all that, but they don't continue that open
So
drain that we have?
what we're actually talking about is if we utilize that trench drain, we're actually gonna put an aluminum grate over the top of that so that it's not open. You wouldn't actually have an open piece. It would be covered. Now, we could look at relocating drains under there, saw cutting the slab, putting some drains in, that's
Well,
possible
I
as
don't
well.
think you have to do that, but I also don't think you have to keep the entire trench drain open. You can find select
We can.
places along it where you have the
Absolutely.
grades to allow for drainage. But that trench drain, in my opinion, is a place where odor is created, and therefore, the longer it is, the more likely it will continue to serve that purpose. So if you have it as drains at select locations, that's different than having it as this trough that exists right now.
We can easily do that.
It's a trough of nastiness.
It is. It's in pretty rough shape.
And so I just don't want it to be a trough of nastiness with tile on
I agree. I'm anti-trough nastiness.
Because there is
it.
nothing.
Even with tile,
Fair enough.
With what?
even with tile on
Even
it.
with tile.
Because when you walk in.
So the exterior of it, and I'm gonna show you guys some options of what we can do to the exterior of it, but really the improvements we're talking on the exterior is we would end up painting the trim of the dormers. We would refresh the brick and the cast stone because it needs to be washed and cleaned appropriately. And then I have a few options for you guys to look at today as far as where we could locate some stone. Now, the stone on this would not be the same that we would use at McPherson because it doesn't necessarily complement the brick very well. So we would be using more of an Austin stone or a limestone type of look on this to enhance some of the architectural elements that you see.
What
So-
is it now?
Right now, it's all brick, 100% brick. Everything is brick, and then you have some cast stone accents and banding.
Some of the
And
brick
these are
is
just
kind of
brick
options,
as
we
well.
don't have to add any stone,
I
but,
go out
you know,
and
the
look
desire
at it
was to
again.
kind of enhance the quality of these, so these were just options for consideration.
You know, I have visual on this.
So the options are gonna be an A, B, and C. Option A, because we already have the cast stone banding and a sort of a natural wainscot, would be to take the brick off of that and replace it with a stone wainscot all around the perimeter. Option B would be to take the center area. So they're gonna go in order of cost.
Can you go
A,
back?
what I thought.
you bet.
Go back one more time.
A is gonna be your most economical, B would be a little bit more expensive, and C is gonna be your most expensive option. And really, that relates to the amount of stone that we're putting on the facility.
Okay,
So,
there's A.
so A,
I like that way.
B would then be the vertical element would become stone, and that stone would then start to wrap on the inside because the brick wraps on the inside. And then C would be a combination of both.
I like that.
I don't like that.
I like A.
I like it.
I do
Look
too.
at it.
There's something about A that I really like.
I see, I
Me
don't
too,
know,
go all the way
because-
back in.
I like A
I do too, I
because
don't know why.
it's
If you go out there and look at the brick, have you guys
Symmetric.
been out there lately?
No,
You
I
said
have
you were gonna
not.
clean
Go
it
look
up.
at
it
the,
up.
go look at the brick,
Okay.
and you come back and
Okay.
report. You're gonna
Oh,
go,
can't we get a brick washer out there?
Yeah, I think there's two things we have to do
It's
to the
pitted.
brick. We're gonna have to acid wash it, and then I think the other thing is we're gonna have to come back and repoint the mortar, because some of the mortars is really,
it's pitted really bad.
A lot of them were.
it was a
You're gonna spend
raked
probably just as
mortar,
much to do-
which
to fix
is,
it with the stone.
I agree.
But just
Bobby.
looking at, for some reason, quickly, going
Yeah.
through, A
Yeah,
looked the best.
Yeah, I'm just talking about
That
the
was
visual
my
of this,
reaction.
yeah.
But I'm gonna look at it. Let's go look
Sure.
at it. yeah.
We will, because I
Okay,
can't.
so I will put down in soft pencil A, unless I hear otherwise from you all.
A lot
Well,
of
I
the
mean,
brick
we're
was.
talking about addressing the brick too.
None
and
of
the
what
Yes.
Bobby said.
That's all B.
My first question gonna be, why do you think any of that's better?
Why do you think what? Any of that's better? Any of it's better?
I do, I like the, I
Clean brick.
like the design.
I'll just say,
I hear you.
yeah, as a parent that goes out there and walks that thing just about
Yeah.
every weekend, it needs some help, it really does. It needs some
Okay.
paint, it needs some updating, and that to me, the C complements our buildings that we have. We always talk about how we want everything to look conducive and look nice. I think right there that it's a bathroom.
And Bobby,
It's
that's
really good.
after we power washed the heck out of it.
Yeah.
It looks that bad. The brick is in bad shape. It's
It
Yeah,
is.
well, in the mortar in particular.
Well, all the mortar inside.
Well, it's
weathers.
weathered, and it needs, the tuck pointing has some, needs some tuck pointing. But really, I think the entire park, a lot of our brick needs to be acid washed. And some of it is almost to the point now where, when you're doing this kinds of architectural things, you should talk about,
Replace it.
architectural painting or even some other things,
Well,
because.
should we explore that? Because, I mean, this to me, see, I mean, I get what Bobby's saying with the veneer, more of it is a very attractive option in general, but maybe it's the brick that's really just very
Yeah.
unattractive here. I mean, maybe we should
It's just
explore.
being pretty
Let's
good.
take a field trip.
It is beat,
Yeah.
it is
And just,
beaten up.
in
I
your
mean,
mind, just remember, you're fixing to put a lot of money into these bathrooms,
Right.
make it look really nice and classy, and then you're gonna walk out and go, wow,
But I
where's the
think,
rest of it?
no, and I'm agreeing with you, because I
Yeah.
don't want it to look like we're just putting lipstick on a pig, right?
Okay,
Like,
so
let's,
we gotta do a field trip.
yeah, yeah.
Field trip.
Better individually, doesn't
But let's
matter.
not just
Go
put
ahead.
veneer on
Look
and
at the shag and
think that
rag and
fixes
roll
it. Let's make sure we really fix it, like, the way it should be
We need to
done.
look at it,
Yeah.
This,
Okay.
that's fair enough.
so C is the 500,000, or is it more than that?
So just looking at the rough difference between these, and it's really based on square footage of it, you're probably looking in the $15,000 range here. You're probably looking in the 30 to 40, and then you're looking at probably closer to 60. Just, you're replacing more, so.
Makes sense.
The actual tennis pavilion, very similar. The only difference on this layout is this is a seating area. So the biggest difference on this one for you guys to note is that how, when you go out there and take your field trip, is to understand how much brick is actually in this one, because it's almost double the amount on the one side because that brick extends to the interior. So anything that we're suggesting doing, whether it be the stone or the brick, we would want to replace or carry that characteristic on the interior of the covered area.
Can I make a different suggestion? Go back to the previous. What if we put, this one here. What if we put some sort of signage up there over that says Colleyville as opposed to
Just the brick.
just leave the break, but put a sign of some sort that flows along that says Colleyville?
Interesting, absolutely.
Sure.
Because to me, that's really part of why it's not inviting. And I don't think adding more stone veneer to it's gonna make it more inviting. I think it needs something that says, welcome to Colleyville or something.
This building, I'm missing, I guess, your point. I mean, you're in the Colleyville Park.
I know that, but more signage is never bad.
This building, for some reason, my personal opinion, I don't perceive as bad as the concession. And so maybe it's because it's in an area that's got a little more shading or a little less use or something. Interior wise, yeah, it still needs the renovation inside. But the building on the north feels to me like it's been beat more, and I don't have necessarily an explanation why, because I'm assuming they were built around the same time.
Yeah.
But we'll see that when we go out there.
Yeah, and this,
Well, there's,
I'm
this
familiar
one
with this
doesn't get as
building.
much use.
More, so me too.
Right,
Me
no,
neither.
yeah, I'm not with you. I haven't, and I don't think I've even seen the other building.
I went over there.
Oh, you gotta
to
go
see
in it
Callie's
before we
voice
renovate.
playing.
Yeah, the interior were pretty rough. And one of the things I didn't mention is in the restrooms, we are gonna replace the ceiling as well. So when you go in there, it really is gonna be brand new. It's new lights, new ceiling, everything to it.
That's good.
I am done.
Okay.
So the only other thing I wanted to mention is timeline.
And then Nature Center, you said something about a blue light pole, and I
Yes,
missed what
security.
that was.
So it's a security,
Emergency.
yeah, it's just an emergency
Oh.
pole, and they're self-sustaining. We just put a base and install. Yes.
It's like
Okay.
like a panic button.
Right.
Okay,
We'd like to
gotcha.
get to a point where multiple spots along the nature center,
Yeah, have
we
it.
have the place where you push the button, and that lets the police know that there's an emergency at that location, because
Is there any
trails.
communication?
Well, there's different technology you can use, advanced two-way connection, or
I
just,
say, so the Nature Center is out in the middle of nowhere. You get kids who go in there punching it 15 times a day. If you can't communicate, is that gonna be a problem?
it could be, and
There
there's,
needs to be something.
and there's different levels of technology. We're just
Yeah.
saying we'd like something out there dealing with security based.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why you notice we had individual bathrooms. The idea is when you open the door to go in, you can see there can be nobody waiting in there, and it's safe for 4 people that are using it in remote locations.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we're going to 3, McDonald School Road and Westwood Drive intersection. Interesting.
I'll try to condense where I can, in the interest of time. I know we got a couple more presentations.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Ray Silvarez, Director of Public Works. I want to talk to you about the construction timeline for the McDonald School Road and Westcote Drive intersection, converting that from a 3-leg intersection to a roundabout. As you heard per Adrian's presentation, the City of Colleyville residents prefer a shorter duration. Right now, the current duration that we're having for this construction project is a 9-month duration to keep traffic flowing at all times and to continue construction going on. So what that includes with the phase construction, as I'm calling it here, phase 1, it will keep traffic in the existing lanes while the contractor builds the hatched areas that you see there.
Can you
So that
point,
would
wait a
be
minute,
phase 1.
so it'll be in the lanes and they'll be doing the
So,
blue?
yes, they'll be doing, so traffic flow at the first phase will be normal. The contractor will be on the outside. Of course, he'll have some slow down
Oh,
codes or
yeah,
something.
doing
Slowing
utility
everybody down while he
numbers.
builds the blue hatch there.
Doing the blue and the hatched, right? Or just the hatched?
Just the blue, just the blue for now. And then,
Oh, okay.
then that's what, so construct the blue and then leave some curbing for temporary pavement will be used for traffic for phase 2. So we'll switch them over in phase 2 as you will see here.
How long is that phase? Sorry, the first phase.
So we don't have, because
Okay, you're not at that stage yet.
Because the
Okay,
engineering, the
okay.
engineers are doing this, they're just giving kind of a generalized
okay.
conception of what he would do. Again, it would be up to the contractor once we bid it, if we go this route,
Got it.
whichever route, to
Okay.
give us a more detailed
But
plan.
generally, phase 1 looks
Generally,
pretty
this is
short.
what it
I
would
mean,
be.
yeah, okay.
And so they would build those and then get traffic onto the west side, so that they can continue going with traffic duration there, as you can see here, and then start building this part here and quarter of the roundabout. So that would be phase 2. Phase 3 would be just working on the islands and what has been left over to get all the roundabout parts in place and getting traffic flowing fully. So that would be with the approach that we're currently doing, which was what the design team was instructed to do. So doing the phase construction, you're looking at 270 calendar days, which is 9 months. We're bringing here before you to see if we can do it in 90 calendar days, but that would require us shutting down the entire intersection. So you couldn't come from John McCain down to Westcote to McDonald, or you couldn't come from LD Lockett up to McDonald. So that's what we're here to discuss about, mainly because it just gets it out of the way quicker. We could do it in the summer, not impact the school, which is a heavy
Tell me,
traffic area there.
how's it gonna be,
If we start, if the way it's currently on the calendar, when does it approximately start? Is it after school is out or is it late spring?
So yeah, it would be late spring, right around the area when school would be
Okay.
out. So you'd have those 3 months where you would have no interaction with school traffic or
Okay,
that
so the way
time.
it's currently scheduled, it'll start kind of right as summer's starting, maybe at the end of
Right.
the school year.
Both phases
And
would
then
start
it's
out
gonna
at the same time.
Continue, okay, and then 6 months of
Traffic gonna
school.
go?
It's just a matter of how we bid it out. So
Yes.
if we bid it out this way, they're gonna charge us a little bit more. So there will be a cost reduction if we go with the shutting it down. You're looking, because to build those extra lanes, those temp lanes, it adds more cost to the project. So there's already an inherent value just going to closing it over the summer.
I think there's another factor here too, than just an experience-based observation. If you do the phase, you predict 270, the risk of that getting bigger, going higher is much greater than if you close it down, that 90 days is, the risk of that going higher is low.
Why?
I agree with you.
Why?
Because there's no interference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have complete
Some-
control.
Oh,
over it.
yeah, okay, gotcha.
And the other
Interference.
question is, and when I thought about this was, okay, it's gonna be painful either way.
Yeah,
Is that's such a drastic difference in time and minimizing
It is.
of risk. You know, I don't, you know, so the short pain versus the long
Agreed.
pain.
Can we, I wanna get to where we talk about where people, how are people are gonna get in their neighborhood.
can we put it on
Yeah,
the
that's
list?
a good point too.
Can't we take a poll with the people that
I
live
mean,
back
you
there and
shut
ask
it-
them what they
It
want?
means shutting it totally down.
So you would shut it at the construction limits on the north and south of
Understand.
West Coast.
And
So you
west
can,
also? How far west?
I'm sorry, yeah, west as far as well, right there to,
There's a
we would
home.
have to work with the Westmont subdivision there to get them in and out. But that's
There's a
not-
traffic
that's not-
management plan, but you'd almost have to tell the eastbound traffic to reroute them almost at precinct line, because otherwise you're gonna have to cut through traffic,
Oh, yeah.
getting stuck and turn
I'd
around.
rather-
Right, we would have these signs way out of
LD
precinct line.
lock-
Yeah.
let's go to LD lockers.
I
So
would
are you
just
talking
rather-
about
there's a
doing
really
John
important
McCain
piece
at the
that
same
he hasn't
time?
got to
Are we
yet.
just
So
talking about
that's on-
90 calendar days here and then?
Well, that's another thing I'll get to, but
Okay.
let me run through these.
I've read
So
through
that's
it.
some of the savings that we're looking for there.
I mean,
Here, we just were at the initial starting of the design for Westcote and McCain. I haven't gotten far enough yet to bring you something, but what I am talking about here, and I will bring this up at another work session here soon, maybe by January or February, to discuss whether we throw that one in the mix as well too. So you can possibly, and I'll bring this up with more details, close both of those intersections. The only requirement would be that this Westmont Drive would have to facilitate traffic or for the local residents in that area, because you would isolate this neighborhood and those living along there.
Yep.
But you would open this up, and the only people who would be using that road are those residents that live here, because you're isolated from here and there, so you couldn't use, there'd be no way for cut-through traffic.
Right.
So the only people that are gonna use that are those that live there in Westmont and those on Westcote.
Can,
About 30
did-
houses.
It's about, yeah, it was, I believe it was about 30 houses or so with that neighborhood in those fronting Westcote. And that's something that we're gonna bring in.
I asked one time when there was construction on John McCain, or it was when they were repaving West Coast, if we could open that fire entrance. because I got concrete all over my car. And we were told that they couldn't because it wasn't a safe turn onto John McCain. And I didn't know if you'd had that conversation yet.
I haven't discussed that with them. I wasn't.
Yeah, I know
so-
you're in very preliminary, like, figuring it
So
out.
we, it's
so
just, because I knew that question was gonna pop up, so I wanted, we're thinking about it. They're telling us it's a 2-month duration for that intersection because it's a smaller roundabout. So as I get more details, I was gonna bring it back here and see if this works. But that's what we're gonna entertain here with you at the next work session that we bring this up, is to discuss whether we wanna throw those two intersections together.
Yeah,
So we can roll 60 days on that if perfect weather and everything goes right, and open it on up, and still have that one down for 30 days, so we'd actually open a big chunk for after 2 months.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And what's the timing now on the bridge at Pleasant Run?
Oh, yeah.
On Pleasant Run?
Yeah.
So,
South Lake.
my understanding is that Texas was gonna try to do it, this summer, this coming summer, 2020, let's get it going. Evidently, I was told today by the city of South Lake that Texas has discovered some issues regarding
Yeah.
some, endangered species or animals, birds that are out there, and so they're not looking to start till the fall.
Yeah, and I talked to Ben yesterday at the detention, and that's what he told me too.
Yes.
That's a year.
I haven't
A little
been,
bit.
I haven't been told
So
by
it's-
Texas yet.
It's conceivable that you could get these done
Done
before
before
that
that
starts.
starts. That would be
It's Very
awesome.
conceivable, yes,
Yeah.
because that would be the other problem, would be that area closed.
Yeah, and that would be kind of important. I mean, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. And regardless of which option we go, we were advertised and bid and awarded
Yeah.
all at the same duration, at the same time, sorry.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how long construction takes.
Because that's another factor, because if you go with the longer time frame, you're gonna have that bridge going down, be shut, Pleasant Run is gonna shut down also.
And there's LD Lockett construction coming too.
LD Lockett is
Isn't it
coming.
for a year?
And based on our conversation, I may
Yes,
delay that
it's
one.
closed.
Because I was
See
bridge,
how it all
and
stacks
I don't
up.
wanna lock the whole west side.
Right. I mean, the reroutes already are gonna be, they're gonna be miles, right? Like to go when John McCain and Westcoast's closed, you're gonna have to loop Bandit all the way back around.
I mean, yeah, you would have to come up down Pleasant Run Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's just no way around it, I'm not
It
saying.
would make it a little bit, it would be an inconvenience,
Hey,
but
Ray, so you're gonna come back anyway?
Yeah.
yes.
We got 2 more items.
Yes.
You're
in 12
fine.
minutes.
Not from
Okay.
Colleyville, just from tonight.
So,
Just from this.
sorry, so we're not gonna make a decision on this, because.
No.
I think so.
Sounds good. All right. I'll bring it up next time then.
No, so we've, you've heard some discussion, but,
How's
I
that
think
related
it's,
to the
a key
Old
question
Roberts
is
Road?
that other roundabout. You know,
Is
Right.
there any way to get
Information.
input from the citizens who live back there? I would like to get some input from the
I
people
can
who
get
have to
input
deal
from
with
our
it.
neighborhood, who,
How many neighborhoods does it affect? 3?
there's 2, yes, there are 3 neighborhood entrances that affects. 2 belong to Westmont and one is Oak Hills, I think is what it's called. But then there's also some individuals that live off of West Coast.
Aren't you there showing present?
Tim, it'll also affect the neighborhoods to the west who will have cut through.
Right.
Well, is there a way of getting some feedback so that we don't have to make this decision that, we can get the input from the people that actually have to
I
deal
think-
with it
in
every
the
day?
end, you will have to make this.
Well, I know we will, but I would like to hear what they have to say.
But we don't even have enough information yet to give them enough information.
Well, let's find some.
Bingo, so
Yeah.
I'm saying
Are you-
accelerate
he's in a hurry
getting
tonight.
put together the thought
Yep.
process.
So we'll bring
Yeah.
forward, you'd have to bring forward an alternate traffic management
Don't you
plan.
think we need their input?
Bring that to the next meeting for
I do, but we don't
discussion.
have enough information yet.
We're not
For
ready.
the,
Yeah.
How you would
No, I
manage
do,
traffic
I do,
flow
and I told her,
if you
because
were
Ray
to
and I-
do the closure.
Yes.
okay.
That's very important.
That's critical.
I don't need
Yeah.
that.
Sounds good.
I'd say
All right,
nine
back to
minutes. Let's get it done.
Roberts Road.
Question,
Last time we
so
left
where
off,
the
let me
roads
just
is,
do a
how's
quick
this
recap.
gonna
We're going to be doing it from Blade Road all the way up to the northern city limits of Colleyville.
Be a big deal. That's
Uh,
what I
It's
just-
gonna be all curb and gutter. One thing that we talked about last time was looking at the right turn pocket for Glade Road onto Roberts. We did go back, we did get an engineer to look at that, and it does warrant one on that side. We were only looking at one at Roberts Road, for that side, and so I just wanted to show you overall picture of where it was from Heritage Avenue. And so we will include that in this design. So we'll have both a right turn lane on Glade and on Roberts Road as well.
The question before, though, was do you continue it all the way down to the existing wider pavement to the east, I think was the question.
I thought we decided to.
'Cause-
Based on the design, on the trip counts that we had, that's what is recommended by the engineer. Yes, sir.
All the way down?
So you're going all the way down?
Going to right about.
Oh, that's not all the way down. The question last time was, we know you have a right turn lane that you're requiring onto Roberts Road. You have a 2-lane
It's-
westbound.
The question last time, do you have it at all?
Right,
Yeah,
that was the
Leave
question.
it at all, if you do it, it's gotta go all the way down if you're gonna have it.
Well, but we didn't really talk about that. We talked about, is it yes or no, do you have one? Now, this is another question. If you go all the way down, I would expect that gets a lot more complicated.
It will.
You were supposed to
A lot
look at
Yeah,
more
some
because
of
it
you were
goes all the way
talking
down
about
to
trucks
Walgreens
turning
before it
there.
ever starts
Yep.
to fade.
Well, aren't those houses built right on it?
You almost have to lose the.
I don't think you-
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's why we were looking at stacking it right there on the church property, because that's the only really place we have to relocate or move anything with offsetting some parking spaces for the church.
And you're looking at, yeah, you're offsetting some parking spaces, and then the sidewalk has to be
And
moved.
the sidewalk has to be correct, as opposed to
But aren't
really
those-
pinched.
Aren't
going
those
anywhere
houses to
beyond
the north
east.
almost on the road?
I'm sorry,
The houses, as you go further east,
yes.
Where's your
beyond
taper
the
at?
church.
Where's the end of your taper is what I guess we asking.
So your taper starts right here by the.
So it doesn't
that would
get to the
be
houses?
Right
Right.
about here.
Okay, so you're.
So you're leaving the houses alone,
Right.
and you can stack enough cars.
And my
for the
point
right number.
is, those houses are, that one house anyway is built right
And it gets very
within.
complicated.
Yeah.
You really have no
Extremely.
flexibility to put unless we shift the
What he
road.
just
Road starts right here,
I understand.
Okay,
So-
then it's,
so
that doesn't affect that house.
So there'd be no extension of it, is what it's
Yeah,
saying.
but if you're saying you're gonna take it all the
The
way,
But
city
that's only
manager
if you do
raised the
the full
question all the way
note.
down. That question had never been raised. I don't.
I apologize. I
Thank
thought that
you.
was one of the questions. I thought that was one of the questions being asked is,
Yeah, no.
No, I didn't
think
show
we
right
looked
turn
at
lane
it.
last time.
Okay, you got what you need or not?
Yes.
Or
that's
you were
right.
just informing us. I
Yeah, I'm
guess.
just informing you that it was warranted and just to bring it back up.
Good.
Yeah, last time, yeah, that was
Correct.
the question, was it, and we said, do a study, take a look at it, you said, yes, you did a study, so, yeah, we need a turn lane on Glade. We have one more button.
Actually, real quick, I did want to talk about, these are the left turn lanes on Glade.
Right,
We are looking at, as we were looking at the right turn lane, whether it was needed or not, we found a study back in 2015 that said that there were some site issues with these pockets. So keeping them as is, you'll still have the site distance issue. What we're doing is to do some, just strike down medians as opposed to having the raised curbs to help with visibility, so people can scoot over a little bit enough to see it. And that's what we're recommending as well.
Because they were bumping off of it.
Correct.
Okay.
So I didn't see an issue, but I just bring it up because it is a different change from last time. And just a quick look at the schedule.
Turn off the Robert.
okay, thank you.
So
Rick.
what then?
Okay,
Thanks, Ray.
medians.
Thank you. Oh, I should have brought the copy.
Thank you. There you go.
this has changed.
What do we have?
It's the Mesa presentation that was in the packet.
In the packet, not in the folder. I'm gonna have to go in and turn.
Okay. Okay, well, in the interest of time, while we're pulling up the images for reference, we will walk through, if Mayor, if you're good with that.
Start walking through this.
Oh, pardon?
I was gonna say, in the interest of time, while we're pulling up some of the image slides, do you want me to go ahead and start walking through?
Sorry.
Okay, so this agenda item is an update and follow-up to the State Highway 26 median and right-of-way designs. We have our team from Mesa here to answer any questions. They don't have a formal presentation for you this evening, but they are a great resource if there are questions. What we've asked them to do, the last time we met, we revisited the kind of updated vertical element structures into a little less old world, and also asked Mesa at that time to come back with updated cost estimates that were reflective of the updated median design, the updated vertical elements, and the sheet that I put before you that was in the agenda packet walks through that. So we'll go through that from top to bottom. The first sections that are highlighted in green, you'll see the two columns for that kind of very initial concept that was a little bit more of that old world from back in May versus what we looked at now in December 2019. So the corridor hardscape and landscape, that would be kind of what we'd consider the base portion of the project. That would be your medians and a little bit of the right-of-way there. You'll recall that kind of curved planter design that we selected. We went through that exercise with all of the boards around the room and ultimately laid it on that design. So you'll see that since the May timeframe, the corridor hardscape has gone from about 2.1 to about 3.5 million in estimated cost. The landscape from 2.8 to 2.9. That would be, again, kind of considered the base portion of the project. The main cost driver and change in that is a lot of the stone elements and the frequency with which those planters and hardscape repeat themselves. Also, the stone choice from the original design was a little bit more refined instead of a rough cut. So a little bit of cost difference there. That's the main driver that you're seeing in those changes.
But it is a 50%
It
increase.
is. I mean, there's a significant increase in the amount of stone there from the original kind of loose wall design that we went with.
Is it the amount of stone or
I'd
the
say
fact that there's?
the vast majority, Mesa, correct me, as I understand it, is the amount of stone, but some portion of it is the type of stone. Yes, I'm seeing heads nod. When you look at the vertical elements for the different gateways that we went through, the main cost difference from then to now on the northern John McCain and 26 gateway are related to the changes when we looked at relocating that gateway element from the northwest corner to the southwest corner. And so you'll see kind of in the before and after cost estimates that that northwest corner price dropped quite a bit because we moved the tower from that northwest corner to the southwest corner. And then the southwest corner, of course, was not previously in discussion, and by adding improvements to that gateway, that's the cost that you're seeing there. On Main Street, not a big deal of, not a big amount of cost change there. Some of that, again, is the stone. We did add that little bit of relief, small trickle fountain there at the base of one of the columns. That was a little bit of a difference in the type of stone. Also, you'll recall the lantern type element at the top of one of the towers was a different change in the design for that Main Street tower element. The southern Creekside Gateway, that was the kind of biggest overall design change going from that cistern design to the tower options. You'll recall that in our last discussion with Mesa, we went through a variety of tower discussions looking at the 90-foot tower. Also, there was a 70 and a 50-foot available. I went ahead and listed off to the side here the cost differences for if we were, because I think at the last discussion we had said the general consensus was the 90. But wanting to see what those numbers came back at, we went ahead and included the dollar savings. So you'll see that if you drop down to a 70, not a huge amount of savings comparatively because you're still paying for all of the base, setup, scaffolding, all of that work. It's only an $80,000 savings. If you drop down to a 50, you're looking at about $180,000 savings there. But again, comparing total from May to December, you're looking at about 7.5 to 10.7 overall difference. And then as a reminder there at the bottom of your cost breakdown, you'll see the lighting package. So that agenda item is actually on your regular consent agenda for this evening for award. You'll recall that we initially bid that out quite some time ago, hoping to get some cost breaks by bidding out just the material. Didn't receive any bids for that, so we repackaged it back with both the materials and the construction installation of those light poles. Actually got a number of favorable bids back. I think we had 5 received. So you'll see that later on in your agenda, and that came back very close to those estimates. So we've gone ahead and broken that out now that those are known numbers.
Yeah, okay.
So all in all, just wanted to provide this information to the council. This was something that you all had requested, and we're kind of at the point where we're looking for some determination as to whether you're comfortable with at least some portion of this moving forward with construction documents. Because of course, once we give Mesa the direction to move forward with construction documents, there's quite a bit of work and expense related, and having to do some redesign can add some additional expense there.
Yeah. So, are you asking that question now, like, do we move forward the construction on the medians, or?
I think, at this point, it would be helpful to know that if there is some work we could go ahead and get Mesa started on. I know at the last work session, there was some desire to, get moving so that citizens can see some of the work, and at least the medians, that as soon as TxDOT clears the way, they can see that beautification coming. So if the council's comfortable, we could, as an option, go ahead and direct Mesa for these green sections, just the basic hardscape and landscape, give them the direction to go ahead and move forward with construction documents and get
I
that
think
bid
we
out
should do that.
as quickly as possible.
We have to.
Okay, great. That's exactly the feedback we needed, and we will get to work on that.
Very good,
Thank
super.
you.
Next, 29. Get it. Okay.
Thank you, Mesa.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here.
We appreciate you.
Okay, so the only other agenda item on work session is any discussion we may need to have on regular agenda items. I don't think I have any comments for any of those. Do y'all? Anyone else?
No.
Okay, then with that, I'm gonna close the work session. Are you good with that?
Yes, sir.
Work session closed, and we're going to move